Hello, fellow flight sim enthusiasts. Welcome back to another in the series of development videos for the F-18 Hornet for DCS. It is a flight school campaign that I'm putting together with the hope of bringing new pilots in from zero experience all the way to being able to be reasonably effective in the field. So far, we have done the Block 1 training, which was navigation, learning how to use a navigation system to get from point A to point B, TAC, and all that stuff. And we've also completed the air-to-ground block, which was a training zone we had over here where we were practicing all different kinds of air-to-ground tactics from CCIP bombing to GPS-guided bombing to laser bombing to Mavericks to using the FLIR, all of that stuff. I have already finished the rough in for the entire air-to-air block, so we're going to start going through those right now, so you guys can have an idea. I haven't tested any of this yet. I've just kind of sat down and put the missions together, assuming that they're going to work, but I have to go back and test them. But anyways, the air-to-ground portion was based out of Vaziani over here because it was close to the training area I wanted to have set up over here because there was nice flat ground for you to see things. You didn't have to worry about finding things in the mountains or in forests and stuff like that. So that was good over here. But now for the air-to-air portion, I kind of want to be able to have you guys fly out over the ocean because then there won't be anything in the way to get in the way of your radar, which, can get confusing when you're first learning how to use it. So for the most part, when you're fighting anything, it's going to be out over here, except towards the end. So for this first flight, it's just I try to start out the first lesson in a block of training to basically just be flying around and just giving you some information, because teaching you about how the radar works takes a bit of time, and I don't want you just sitting there on the ramp going, "Oh my God, is he going to stop talking?" I want you to be doing something so that I don't want it to be a high intensity task, but I want you to be doing something so that you feel like you're getting something done while you're learning. So the flight itself for this first one is basically you take off from Vaziani, where you've been for the Block 2 training, and you're flying out to Cavaletti over here, where we're going to be doing the Block 3 training. So along the way, the instructor that you've had this whole time explains to you how to use the radar. It starts out. Let's pull up the message here. So it starts off with first and foremost learning how the radar works. It's a cone in front of you. You can use the air mode to get to bring the radar up onto your right. Then we get into we do a tour around the MDI to teach you what all the different buttons do. Talks about the line sweeping back and forth, which is where the radar is pointed at that moment. Then we start going into how bars work for vertical scanning. Vertical scanning for the bars, with the way that works, not the radar elevation. I do discuss that later. We explain we give an example of how the bar works, and then we give you the information about how you want to try to find a balance between getting enough vertical coverage to actually find things, but not having so much coverage that your refresh rate is really low and you're not getting fast enough updates. And then I recommend a 4-bar pattern as your default, which you can adjust as you go. Then we talk about the silence button so that you can go stealthy if you need, as stealthy as the Hornet can be, but you can go stealthy as you can. The erase button removes all your contacts. And then we talk about the heading and the currently selected weapon, which does show up on your radar. After that, we go over the range adjustment and how it doubles or halves based on whether you press up or down, and the demarcation lines that tell you, a quarter of that distance, half, and 3/4 of that distance. Then we talk about how the set button will save your changes so that when you come back to the radar after leaving and coming back, or if you change some things, you can go back to those settings. You can set different settings for different things. I don't go into the data stuff. That stuff, I don't want to get too far into the weed for these lessons. I want to provide just enough information so that you can be competent, not necessarily an expert. Becoming an expert requires a lot of time, and that's not something you can really put into a lesson into a flight school kind of thing like this. And that's, kind of the way it is in reality. The flight schools are going to teach you enough to where you can be competent, and then it takes years of just doing it to become an expert and learn all the little tiny details that come along with doing these things. Then there comes a time, and then we talk about the sweep. We do a brief overview of the sweep setting about how you can reduce the left to right motion of your radar to get a faster refresh rate. We're not going to talk about mode, and I do a brief little blurb about interleave and how it allows you to pick up aircraft better depending on their aspect. Then we talk about the radar elevation, how that works, how you need to move your radar up or down depending on how high or low your enemy might be, your targets might be. Then we talk about how to use the TDC to move the cursor around, and then we talk about using the TDC depress to select your targets. Then I cover about how one of the things that I struggled with when I was first starting to use the F-18 in any kind of air-to-air engagement was that I didn't understand that data link contacts aren't lockable. You can't lock those. And you need to the new pilots need to understand that just because you see something on your radar doesn't mean that your aircraft actually sees it. You have to wait until your aircraft actually sees the target before you can actually lock it up. So I made sure to put that a blurb about that in there so that they would understand, oh, okay, so I need to verify that my aircraft can actually see it. Then we talk about we start talking about the IFF symbology. I don't go too crazy into detail. All you really need to understand is that green circles are good guys, red diamonds are bad guys, and if it's yellow, then you have some kind of uncertainty as to what it is. And I do talk a little bit about what the different shapes and how it works, and the fact that you need two forms of identification, as well as the speed and altitude of the aircraft with the directional line that tells you what direction it's moving. Then we talk about the fact that you need to verify before you fire on anything that it is an enemy, because you don't want to shoot somebody down. And I talk about how the symbol itself is made up of two different parts. The top is the information coming from your aircraft, and the bottom is the information coming from another source. Then that's it for that. And I make it very clear that, hey, don't worry if this is a little bit confusing. You'll pick it up as you go. Just remember that this is how it works. Then the last part is just saying, hey, we learned a lot today, and then by then you're pretty much already all the way over here. So you come back in, you do execute your case 1 recovery practice, and then end the lesson. So that's it for that one. Then we go into single target BVR, where you're going to take off from Cabaletti and come take out a single target using your radar. And en route to getting towards where you can fight this guy, we explain the concepts of how a BVR fight works. So you start out with a little primer and an explanation as to what it is that you're going to do. Then you start talking about how missiles have limited fuel. So you need to understand that first and foremost, you need to, what's the first part? We start talking about how it has limited fuel, and how once it runs out of fuel, that's all the energy it's going to have. If you watch Growling Sidewinder, you know that he talks about that a lot. So it's important. It's an important thing to understand. Then we talk about how it's only going to slow down as it goes, and the tracking system of the missile is going to be, guiding itself towards the target, and we can take advantage of that. We can take advantage of that by moving around. So then we talk about how air density affects the range of your missile. Higher air is thinner air, which gives your missile greater range. Then we talk about how your own aircraft speed also affects the range of the missile, because if you're going very fast, all it's going to do is accelerate and get even faster. And if you're going slow, it's not going to be able to get up to that high of a speed. Then I make a point of letting the pilot know the Hornet is a slow aircraft compared to, some of the other things that we have available to us, which means that it is going to be at I think most people would agree that it's at a significant disadvantage when pitted against modern equivalent aircraft that are specifically designed for air-to-air fighting. I don't want the pilot to think that it's ineffective. You can be effective in the Hornet if you know what you're doing, but you just need to understand that you're not going to be going fast like the other planes, which means that your range is going to suffer and you're going to have to make some adjustments with that. Then we talk about how you need to make sure that you remember that the radar out in front of you is a cone. You can't just turn any direction you want and still expect, to get good results. You need to provide tracking for your missile. And I do make it clear that even though the AMRAAM, the A-120Cs that we have will track on their own, but your radar is much better than that missile. So you want to try to hold the lock for as long as you can until you're forced to turn away, either because you're attacked or the missile goes pitbull or whatever. I do talk about how the AIM-7 Sparrow does require guidance all the way in, but we don't do any practice with that because realistically, nobody's going to be using Sparrows. I talk about how there is no set strategy that you can use that's always going to work. It requires some adjustment as you go. By this point, you should have a target in front of you. Go ahead and lock it up. Then we talk about how to do a crank, which is turning off to the side where you bring the aircraft all the way over to the extreme limit of what your radar can detect, so that if they fired anything at you, you're forcing that missile to go off to the side and, use more energy trying to find you. We define the term cranking, and I tell you, go ahead and crank to your left and bring that over that way. Then I go over a quick rundown of what the HUD is telling you as far as the range triangles that you get, max range, no escape zone, and min range, and how it winds down in a clockwise fashion. Then we talk about how the probability kill circle, as it starts out small and then it grows, so you want to wait till that gets nice and big so that you know that you have a decent probability to kill, range, closure rate, all of that stuff. And then we cover the steering dot and how you want that inside your probability of kill circle so that you have a really good chance of actually hitting your target. And then I instruct them, hey, once you get around 20 miles, start turning in towards the target, bring your steering, try not to lose too much airspeed, bring your steering dot into the probability of kill circle, fire off your missile, continue your turn around, which is going to force any missiles that are on their way to curve around it's like you're going this way and now you're trying to go this way, and the missile that was coming this way needs to come around that way to get you, which is going to bleed off speed. And then descend down into thicker air, because we did talk about how thinner air and thicker air affects the range of missiles and the ability of missiles to find you. So if you dive down into thicker air, any missiles that are coming are going to even lose even more energy. So we covered that part. Then we do a quick blurb about the RWR, because for the entire lesson, for the entire flight school, we've been talking about the RWR, but we didn't really explain exactly how it works, because from an air-to-ground perspective, the only time you're going to really be worrying about the RWR is if a SAM is shooting at you, and you get audio cues for that. So I didn't really set up any of the air-to-ground stuff to be particularly deadly, because I want the pilot to learn the concepts, not necessarily be experts by the time they leave. You just need to understand how it works so that when you go into a battlefield on your own, you at least know how it works and you can figure it out. So, but at this point now we're doing air-to-air engagements, and you kind of need to know how the RWR works. So we talk about how there's the rings. We talk about how anything that your radar detects is seeing you with a radar device will show up on the outer ring. Then when you get locked, you're going to get an audible tone with and it will move a position inward. And then if you get locked up, it moves all the way in, starts flashing, and you get this really crazy alarm that starts going after you. So that's what this page is all about here. Then we talk about once your missiles are away, keep an eye on the cockpit to see if you hit anybody, and then you just need to make sure you don't get hit by any missiles. Remind them of the fact that modern missiles aren't just going to go away because you shot down an aircraft. They're still going to be coming at you, so pay attention to that. And then if you don't get the splash, swing back around and try again. That's the idea. I do make it clear that ideally you're not going to merge if you don't have to, because you don't want to get into a situation where, the skill versus luck ratio is much worse than in a BVR situation. So I make it clear, don't worry about killing the MiG. That's not the point. Try to go after it and then come back. And then if you need to go back out and try again, then go back out and try again. But get yourself in the habit of not dying. That's the idea. Then they kill the MiG. Ideally, they kill the MiG. They have 6 AMRAAMs to get it done, so ideally they should get it done or get shot down themselves. Then they return to base, practice their Case 1 recovery as they've done for every single lesson this entire time, and then they move on. Next up is the multi-target BVR. This is where, so I specifically don't talk about the RWS mode in that first lesson, because first of all, the aircraft defaults to it, and then the TWS mode is a little bit more complicated, and I don't want to confuse the issue. I want them to understand how the basic radar works first, and then we'll talk about how to deal with multiple opponents. So there are a flight of MiGs out here. I think they're MiGs. Yeah, MiG-19s out here. I wanted to pick old, easy to kill stuff. Hopefully, I don't have a deep knowledge of those kinds of aircraft, so I don't know how capable the MiG-19 is. But I don't think it's a match for the Hornet. It's an older aircraft. Anyways, so the brief for this is basically, we're going to talk about how to use the TWS mode to lock up multiple targets at the same time. We cover the different radar modes. We talk about the difference between RWS and TWS mode, how RWS is only a single lock option, and the TWS mode is you can lock up multiple targets at a time. We talk about the drawbacks between the benefit and drawback between both of them. Yes, single track, TWS mode provides you the ability to lock multiple targets at once, but it's a software solution to do that, which makes it less reliable, because now you don't have a nice repeating quick beam that's just keeping track of the guy. You're still getting the same sweep that you have, and it's just the software that's saying, okay, well, it's there. So you're having to rely on the software to do that. And then, of course, the benefit is that you're not letting the enemies know that you've locked them up. So it's a good solution in certain situations. And then I cover how the RWS mode is much more accurate and has a much more reliable lock, because you're getting a physical connection, basically, with the radar on that target. So I cover that so that the pilot will understand the differences between the two. Then we talk about how the interface for using the radar in this mode is different. I talk about how the undesignate button does something different in this mode than it does in the other one. It cycles through targets, and you can only unselect by pressing the erase button. And that in RWS mode, undesignate will unlock the target. Then, okay, so this is where I talk about this thing here is where I talk about the differences between the RWR, the two radar modes, and how there's good sides and bad sides to both of them. Then we talk about how you're going to fire off missiles. You can basically rapid fire them, and once you fire a missile, it cycles to the next target. You don't want to crank while you're firing your missile. You don't want to crank for any of this until after you fire your missiles, because you want your steering dot to be in the probability of kill for all 4 of your missiles. So, and if you're cranking, then it might alert the enemy that that you're doing something towards them. Now, at this point, you should be able to see the MiGs, and you basically just go in and practice firing off missiles in TWS mode. As long as you get one of them, that completes the mission, and then you go back and you land at the quote-unquote carrier. So I think I'm going to go ahead and that video is long enough. We'll do the next 3, I think, we'll split these up into 3. As you can see, I've already started doing the carrier block of things. I'm just kind of, I'm tired of testing things. I want to get at least a rough draft in for everything. But anyways, we'll go ahead and end this video here. And then for the next one, we'll talk about the next few air-to-air missions so that you guys can have an idea of what this stuff is going to include. Be sure to click that like button so the YouTube algorithm knows that you're getting something out of this and shares it with more people. I want to generate excitement for this particular campaign that I'm putting together, hopefully. Subscribe to the channel so you can track this as we continue on. And I do have other games that I'm playing and doing playthroughs through, so you can watch those too. And then lastly, I'm looking for cool ideas for exclusive supporter-only content that I can make for those of you who want to help out with the channel financially. So leave your suggestions down in the comments for that, along with your feedback for the video. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you for the next one.